Hi, Luce.
Hey, Linz. This is People Are the Worst, the show where leadership meets reality, because navigating people and people problems isn't just part of the job, it is the job. Join us as we tackle the messy, the maddening, and the downright ridiculous, and explore how to lead through it all with clarity, courage, and maybe some caffeine. I'm Lucy Georgiadis.
And I'm Lindsey Niels, and today we're going to discuss how to navigate tricky performance reviews, because it is the season of such. It's that time of year, and we always get loads of questions about how to navigate these hard messages, how to deal with promotions when maybe a promotion isn't available, and how to manage people's emotions. So that's what we're up to today.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to our performance reviews, Linz. I've got some spicy stuff for your performance review. I know, that's like, don't have anything spicy for your performance review whatsoever.
Yeah, and I was getting excited. The problem is, though, Lucy, I'm a feedback junkie. I'm like, oh, what? You have something? Tell me.
It's funny, actually. I don't think we drink our own champagne very well here, because like we get so much feedback from the team, like lifetime. We get it like, but it's not anonymized particularly. We should probably drink our own champagne and have like an external coach come and do like a proper 360 for us at some point, so that we can hear.
We do, though, which I would say is very helpful for any team. Every quarter, we do a Google survey if it's a small team, and we always ask, like, what feedback do you have for us, and how did we do implementing the feedback from last quarter? So
yeah,
we do get that, which is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, don't worry. For our listeners, we're not that bad. We do get a lot of feedback. Yes.
All
well,
right.
As you say, performance reviews, tough times.
Yeah. Well, let's help out our buddy Ashu here. So Ashu wrote to us and shared that he's got a tricky promotion situation on his hands. So at Ashu's companies, expectations for each career level are actually very well documented and quite transparent. And so Ashu's got this direct report who's not only excelling at his current level, but also taking on successfully much of the responsibilities of the next level up. And so in their company, there's a performance evaluation, right? So you're at calibration, and Ashu is recommending that he's like sort of giving feedback on his direct report, and he's saying that his direct report is excelling, and he's recommending a promotion. Makes sense, right? Exceeding at current level and even taking on responsibilities at the next level. But unfortunately, there's pushback from leadership on giving the employee a promotion. He doesn't exactly know why, but he's surmising it could be because of budget, or maybe the reality is that the business doesn't need that senior level on Ashu's team. So Ashu has reached out to know what are his options to still recognize that individual, because he does want to retain him.
Ugh. Yeah, that's really hard.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it's really tough when you have someone in your team that is operating in that role, and yet there isn't a promotion available or on the table there. And I think, I don't know, I always hate to hear it when that happens, because unfortunately, you do lose great talent that way. And then as the job of the manager gets really hard for poor Ashu, because then they've got to just think, well, how am I going to keep this person? How am I going to keep them interested? And how am I going to keep them on the team if I can't help them get to the next level? Although on the flip side, it is great to hear that they're sort of stepping up. They're getting a lot more hands-on experience for the next step up in their career. So I suppose there are some positives. But as you say, like, this situation happens a lot. There may well
very, very real.
Yeah, we hear this a lot. And you're right, there may well just not be a business need for it, which especially in startups, when someone is doing great, but there's nowhere to go from this upward mobility perspective. So I think we have some good ideas, I hope, here, regardless of whether someone can't be promoted as there's nowhere to go, or they won't be promoted due to any other kind of like internal reasons that you mentioned. And I think, if you're keeping your hat on as a manager of like, well, how do I really help this person and retain them in the absence of being able to move them up, then showcasing their work, I think, would be like tip number one from us, like showcasing their work more to senior leadership. How can you do that? How can you highlight what they're doing? Is it a quick email, or is it a Slack message, or is it a Teams message? Is it something bigger, maybe like a 10-minute spot in a leadership team meeting, or something that gives them some individual visibility that doesn't just keep coming through you? I think another tip, where can you give them the spotlight? Where can you find opportunities for them, not even necessarily to leadership, but just to present to other people? So, because these cross-functional partners that they probably have could also do with hearing about what they've been doing, and where they've been like having great impact for the business. I think there's other things like where can they appropriately shadow you in areas to give them kind of visibility and take questions instead of you. And then I think you're looking at, well, what other skills can they develop? What other interests? What other skills would they be interested in developing so that you can help them work on those and then highlight those in the future too? Because I think when you've got somebody that's probably slightly above the role that they're paid for, the role that they're in, that they have the title for, it's really about like, how can you stretch them? How can you keep them interested? How can you keep the work challenging? How can you keep them feeling like they're making this forward progress, which you want them to have?
Yeah, I think that's the key thing right here. In these situations, it's like, okay, what do I have control over and what I don't? I don't have control whether they get promoted, right? Like in this landscape.
Yeah.
But what I do have control over is one, the quality of my relationship with them, right? So like, how much time am I spending with them? The level of trust I'm building, right, with them, the amount I engage and you just care for them as a human, right? The other thing you have control over is asking the questions, right, to really understand what experiences do they want to have? Like, and I think the way to do, like, this is the perfect opportunity for a career conversation. Yeah. And I know it's quite counterintuitive because when you have a career conversation, you're like, oh, but like the promotion thing's going to come up. But I think the key here is that it's all about thinking much more on a longer term horizon, right? So it's like, there is so much experience to have at this company. And I think often we get too linear, right? About like, oh, it's just the next level. But there's actually often so much more opportunity than what meets the eye. And so I think the key thing is like, all right, I hear you that we want to get promoted, right? Totally understand. And let's put that aside. And I just want us to like really, for a second, I want us to think far out, like maybe even 10 years, 5 years. Where do you want to be? Like no judgment from my end, right? And you'll start to see what they might want to do. Maybe it's starting their own company, maybe, right? And like, who knows what will happen so far out, but you'll start to see what really motivates them. And I think that gives you ingredients to think creatively and outside the box about maybe what opportunities there are, right? So maybe it even might be like, I don't know, let's say they do want to start their own business. It's like, okay, it's really hard to understand, like, it's important to understand the financial operations of the business. So you know what? I'm going to have you sit with our CFO on a few calls or something like that, right? Like all of a sudden, I think you can just open up a lot more creativity. So I would say like, think about what you can control. You can spotlight them. You can highlight them. You can deepen your relationship with them and you can find out what experiences, what they want to learn, and you can help them find those opportunities within the organization.
Yeah. Just by getting to know them better. I will say though, as a one like final note on this question before we move on to the next one, that I think in this situation, a failure mode that we've seen a lot of, which is so easy to fall foul of and slip into, is making promises that you can't keep. Like, okay, well, there isn't budget this time, or there's not that upward mobility this time, but like in a year's time, we will definitely get you there. Like, I promise we're going to get you promoted to the next cycle or whatever. It's like, no. There are too many unknowns. So you just want to work with the information that you have at the time and just make sure that you're not promising something that you're not going to be able to follow through on in the future.
So true. And at some point, it might just be time, like it might be time, right? And if that's the case, then you just got to have that conversation and plan it with them so that you can backfill thoughtfully. They can onboard the next person and support them. You can support their growth. So,
yeah. Keep that dialogue open. Yeah. Okay, so this next question is from Mandy, who wrote in to say that she said, I've got some tough feedback to give a direct report who I know is going to react emotionally and be super defensive. We've all been in this situation. I've brought up the feedback before in our one-on-ones, and it has been received pretty poorly. So it's not going to be a complete surprise. How can I manage their emotions in the moment, in the performance review?
Well, Mandy, I feel for you. Been there. You're just like, oh, I don't want to do this. I know it's going to happen. But Mandy, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. So here's a couple tips. I would say one of the things is you have got to get into a good space yourself before having that conversation. So do not be back to back. Whatever it is for you, it can be like, take a couple breaths. It could be like, take a 3-minute walk, but just get into a good, emotional, grounded space yourself. Like get into a good mindset where you are open. So that's number one. Number two is I think it's always really important to share your intention before you launch into any conversation. And I think that it gives people the opportunity to know where you're coming from and your why. And if people understand your why, the what can land a lot better, right? Because they know that you're coming from a good place. So it might sound something like this. I want to share some top feedback with you because I really want you to be successful here. And I know I've actually shared this feedback with you in the past, but I want to share it again because I really think it could help you. So again, you're just saying the why, you're acknowledging you've heard this before, but I'm saying it again, right? Because I really think this matters. And then I think, it sounds like, Mandy, they're going to get defensive, right? Like you've been here before. And so knowing that when they start to get defensive, this is where empathy is really your friend. It can really de-escalate emotions and allow them to feel heard. And here's a really great structure for how to give an empathetic response. So the first thing you want to do is you want to agree with something they've said. Find something that is true. Then what you want to do is summarize what you've heard. And then it can be quite helpful to put a feeling word on it. So it can either be a feeling word they gave you or you just observe their frustration, right? And then the key is, once you've done that, is you want to ask them a gentle question. And the reason you're doing that is actually going to help them engage back in their prefrontal cortex, right? And you're going to learn more. So this is not a solve it. This is really to help expand the conversation and learn more. So an example, like in this situation, it might be something like, I agree that, so I agree that you're absolutely right? Like it's really frustrating when you're getting the same feedback multiple times and you don't agree with it. So that's that, I've said something that is true, right? And I hear you saying that you don't think it's important for this role. You don't agree with my feedback. That's the summarized part, right? And I can see that you're incredibly annoyed about this. That's that feeling part. So tell me, what do you disagree with the most? That's that gentle question that's now going to engage their prefrontal cortex and help expand the conversation and learn some more about the situation. So empathy is your friend.
Yeah.
These are my main tips.
Yeah, no, I do like that. And I think with empathy, it's that response that you just gave and that kind of the language that you just gave folks is super helpful because you're not relating to the other person. Like, oh yeah, it's really annoying. I was in a similar situation, and you're not diving straight in to be like, okay, well, let's try and fix the problem. You're genuinely putting yourself in their shoes and helping them see that you've really heard what they have to say. And that's the whole thing about being empathetic. And it really is like people who, those of you who are therapists who are listening or who have had like therapy training in some way will know that, being empathetic is your fastest way to de-escalate emotion. It's the fastest way. It works like a dream.
It's so amazing. It's so amazing. And I think the key thing is finding that, as you say, Lucy, like finding the truth, because you can sort of see it, right? If they don't feel validated, if they don't feel like you are acknowledging what they are saying, right? And finding that truth, you can imagine, right? They're just going to yell louder, if you will, right? Or completely disengage because you're like, no, you're not hearing me.
Yeah.
So super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think sometimes you might find that, just to manage their emotions, a couple more tips to help manage their emotions, just showing some vulnerability yourself is really helpful. You can pull out some times in the, or something that you're feeling like, I feel like I'm feeling I feel really guilty about keep carrying on giving you this feedback. I feel like I'm not doing a good job as a manager here, because like I'm obviously missing something in how I'm communicating this feedback to you, because we seem to keep being misaligned and not on the same page, and that makes me I feel like I should be doing a better job there. Like, so it really just sort of helps de-escalate so that person feels like they're working with you. And I think just making sure if you've been empathetic and you kind of feel like that path has been trodden, that that you do keep summarizing what you've heard. Summarizing constantly can really help. Okay, let me just check that I've like really understood your point here, and then go through ABC or whatever it is that they've said, sorry. And that can just help kind of keep focusing the goal of the conversation, which is to get to a good outcome where they feel more aligned with where you're coming from, and vice versa.
Yeah, love that. So just to recap, get in a good place. Empathy is your friend. Showing vulnerability. That was like an amazing example. Showing vulnerability, and then just continuing to summarize so that they feel heard and you are validating your understanding of the situation. Love it. Good luck, Mandy. We're thinking of you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So Josh has also shared a situation. So performance reviews are coming up for him, and he has some tough feedback to give one of his direct reports. He actually feels fine about giving him the feedback, but he's not so confident in coaching his direct report after the fact. And the problem is that his direct report lacks initiative to perform his responsibility because he feels some of his duties are beneath him.
Ugh,
I know.
The worst. Like, you've got to love a good direct report who feels like what they're doing is totally beneath them. Oh, that's a really hard one, because then it's just so hard to change their behavior. Not surprisingly, this is not the first time that I've heard this.
Certainly not. I'm sure many people can relate. You're like, well, this is your job.
Yeah, this is your job. You've got to get good at the job. Anyway, it's interesting. It's a problem that obviously comes up a lot more frequently than you think it would. And I think a lot of the time managers aren't aware even when they have this problem. They haven't really sort of uncovered the fact that like stuff isn't working or performance isn't as they would like it to be. Because the person does feel like what they're doing is beneath them. So, and that's because pride is a real tricky emotion. And it's unfortunately what we have here is this mismatch in expectations, which really could do with being ironed out in order to make some progress. And this is a classic question where people hope that I'm going to have like a magic bullet answer to help them like nip this in the bud without them having to tackle it head on. But sadly, this is not true. It is not the case. There's no getting around it. You have to have a more meta conversation about this, which is like another level of extraction up. And it is perfectly possible to have that in a way that's non-judgmental or accusatory. He's not going to change his behavior until you're aligned, right? So let's just call this guy John. I called him a he already when I didn't know. We'll call him John, so it's just easier for the purposes of the role play. And I would start, and this is where this is like the more meta conversation, like tackling it head on, by saying something like, John, I wanted to chat to you about the feedback that we went through in our performance review. Is now a good time to talk? So hopefully he'll say yes. So you get that like, psychological contract there. Okay, so you can say, this is a tricky thing to bring up, but I hope you don't mind me being direct. I may have totally misread this situation, so forgive me if I have, but I get the feeling that you feel like much of your role and responsibilities day to day are beneath you at the moment. And no judgment from me. If you do, that's fine. But I just wanted to talk openly about how we can address this if you feel it is the case. And then let him respond. So you're acknowledging up front, you're saying, this is going to be quite tricky for me to say. And then you're just hitting the nail on the head with it in a kind, non-judgmental way that hopefully makes them feel like they have the psychological safety to really say, yeah, I think you might be right.
And then the key is pause. Like, do not fill the space. Pause. Yeah. And respond.
Absolutely. And when things are awkward, which this is a bit of an awkward conversation, the tendency is going to be for you to keep rabbiting on. Stop.
Totally. Yeah. I think the other key thing that you shared, Luce, just to point out, is like there's actually a hint of vulnerability in here, right? You're like, I may be way off.
Yeah. And I feel uncomfortable having this conversation.
Yes.
Both things are okay. Both things are okay. Okay. Now, if they say, yes, I think you're right, then firstly, use the structure Lindsey just gave you, empathize with them, and then you can say, well, look, before we go into solve mode, I would just like to give my perspective here. Here's how I see what you do as being vital for the business. Pull out those pieces of their role that you feel are actually very high impact and help him see how what he does day to day ladders up to the company goals in a meaningful way. And I think that's a good, helpful perspective for them to see those things so that they feel that. You then may want to go into how you see his skill gaps and how there is still this delta between his abilities and the next level up. This is hard to say, but it's important for him to understand why you think that his current role, in many ways, it's in fact not beneath him at all. And some of the complexities that maybe he might be missing, which is actually meaning that he's not doing his day-to-day role all that well. Anyway, then you can go into solve mode. So let's figure out a creative way to get these things that you don't love done. And then you can sort of forge a bit of a path forward. Sometimes I found that when people have just said, I do think this is kind of beneath me, just saying that like gets it off their shoulders, and you knowing that they think that and them knowing that you know that is just really helpful, just to kind of, okay, clear the air. Right now I can just try and focus it in.
Yeah. And I think that's like your perfect opportunity. Like if they do say that, if you can get them there so that you're like eye to eye, like you've got that out in the open, right? And then I think an empathetic response, which might look something like this to help out, just to give an example, right? It might be like, John, I get it. It is really annoying when you feel like there's something you have to do that is beneath you. Like you don't feel like it's a good use of your time. And I hear you saying that there's a few things that you just are like, oh, they really just like, they're not the best use of my time, right? They do feel beneath me. And I can tell that that's frustrating. So what would you say are the two things that you feel are the most beneath you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that opens up the two things. And then there might be a creative solve, right? For like those two things, or there might not, but at least you've like really identified, what it like the things that are painful, right? For him to do. But now with AI, there probably is a solve.
Yeah. Yeah. Linz, have you ever had a performance review which had gone really poorly? Not that you delivered, but one that you received.
For sure. A performance review that went really.
I was just wondering if you had one where like,
I mean, I'm sure
my manager could have done this and it would have been like just so much better.
Oh, like I'm the receiving end now.
Yeah, you're like the receiver.
I mean, for me personally, like I just remember being incredibly frustrated when there actually wasn't anything there. So I think that sometimes like you could be like, oh, great, this person's performing great. Like you might have a great performer, right? And they're just like, you're doing great. Like I really don't have any feedback.
Yeah.
And to a high performer, that's actually like incredibly demotivating. I'm like, really? You couldn't have spent a few minutes just thinking like, there is definitely a growth edge here. No doubt. Like, come on. You know what I mean? Or think, right? So just to me, like when I did have that kind of review, it was always like, you don't actually care. Like you are just like, oh, good. You hit your numbers. You're good. I don't have to worry about you.
Yeah.
And maybe they felt relieved, like you're doing great. You know what I mean? Because they're not seeing it as like, oh, I'm actually like showing care by helping them think of, two things that I could do better.
Yeah.
So it's actually the lack of feedback or the imbalance in a review that I personally, in my experience, felt super demotivated by, or just like, I walked out being like, well, are not really invested in me, right? Like they don't really care about my development. Like, fine, okay, non-event.
Yeah.
So just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a really good reminder, though, actually, when you do have like high performers on your team, that is not a pass for you to not prepare for your performance reviews really carefully, because it leaves you feeling crap. Like they just don't care about it.
Find something. There's no way And and you really can't, then you're like, okay, let's think about like, I think then you can observe like, listen, if you want to grow in this way, right? While I haven't exposed you to these situations, like you need to get exposed to these situations. Like you've got to put yourself out here in this way, or we've got to create this experience for you or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So no hall pass if you've got a good performer.
Right. And if you really can't think of anything, that's probably indicative of that. And the person's not like 65 and approaching retirement age. That's a good indication that you just haven't had good enough like career conversations with them to really understand what their long-term career goals are. Because everyone has career goals. No one's just like genuinely completely coasting with absolutely no care in the world about where they go next year or the year after or the year after that.
Right. And their career goal, I mean, it sounds kind of odd, but like their career goal could actually be like, you know what really matters to me is like, I actually just want to get my job done in like a certain amount of time because I've got a lot else going on in my life that I want to, but that's okay. Like that's still a goal. And if you can help them with that goal, that will actually retain someone, motivate them because they're like, wow, this person really cares. And they're okay with the fact that like, you know, sometimes you need those people in the team, right? It's just about like, getting to what's there, right? And just accepting what is and asking open questions.
Yeah.
Well,
lots of you have lots of great high performers on your team.
Yes. So, but I mean, hey, listen, I just want to address like performance reviews are tough. It's also just a lot of work, right? You're like hammering out the end of the quarter. You're trying to get through your KRs. And you've got to do performance reviews and it's a lot. And so if there is anything we can do, like if you've got a situation and you're just like, oh my goodness, if someone could just sort of solve this for me or give me what I should say, right? Like don't hesitate to reach out. Again, you can email us. It only comes to Lucy and I. We've made up all the names from Ashu to Josh to John. So, don't worry. We won't expose who you are, but just reach out, email us. It's Dear L and L. So Dear, the letter L and the letter L at elevateleadership.com. And it'll only go to us. So seriously, like if you're like, oh my God, I just don't know how to give this empathetic response, or I don't know how to do this, just shoot us an email and we'll role play it out for you and we'll give you your script. So, it was so fun to do this again. We have so much fun doing it. And please, let's connect on LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about how we're supporting managers and people teams, you can find us at elevateleadership.com. And we can't wait for our next time on People Are the Worst. And next time it's going to be, we're going to do more performance review, and then we're going to get into comp. So the super juicy stuff. So that'll be super fun.
Thanks so
Good
much.
luck with everything.
Nice to see you.